My coaching philosophy when I started coaching was really you need to have a great serve and a great forehand. And I spent a huge amount of time educating myself and talking to other coaches and working on developing with my players great first serve, good kick serve, and a big forehand. But I think with any skill you develop, I follow a three-step process. You've got to feed, then you've got to transition that into drilling, and then you've got to transition that into point play, and then into match play. That physical environment combined with a great coach, combined with, like I just described, that having those different phases within the year, and that is world class.
Hey Todd, welcome to the Coach Life podcast.
Hey Peter, thanks for having me. Great to be here. Just love talking tennis, all aspects of tennis and player development. So thanks a lot for having me and looking forward to this.
Yeah, we're so excited to talk to you. I remember you from my playing days as a great guy, always supportive, always had a little bit of advice. And obviously I remember you as a great player. You got to 135 in the world. I know you qualified for 18 Grand Slams. And you're probably too humble to say this, but I know you had a lot of problems with your shoulder. And I always remember you not being able to serve at 100% and being constantly injured with that. So I think if you didn't have those problems, you probably would have got up to the top 50. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about your career and how you got into coaching.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks for that introduction. Yeah, I was all right, battling player. You and I had a few battles over the years in futures, etc. But yeah, you're right. Probably the one thing that held me back was probably physically. I wasn't strong enough for the game style that I played, which is interesting. We can talk about that in the future. But yeah, I was born. Both my parents were tennis coaches, and I grew up at a tennis centre in Canberra, in Australia. So tennis was in my blood from a very young age, and started coaching at a very young age, probably about 14. So that was interesting. Childhood, went on tour at age 20, played from 20 to 30 professionally, and then when I stopped playing, I went straight back into coaching. So I was lucky enough to pick up a job for Tennis Australia here in Canberra, coaching elite junior tennis players, and ran the Tennis Australia National Academy for 15 years from 2005 to 2020, and then since then have been coaching privately. So spent pretty much my whole life in tennis, either playing or coaching. Been lucky enough to do a lot of travel and play in all the Grand Slams. So really grateful to be able to do that. And that was a lifelong goal. I had two lifelong goals. One was to be top 100 singles player, which I didn't achieve, just fell short. The other one was to play main draw singles of every Grand Slam, which I was really grateful that I was able to do that. So, yeah, very happy to be in tennis for so long.
Yeah, you had a great career. You certainly did. But then you've had a lot of success with coaching Nick Kyrgios and other top juniors. I know running that program in Canberra, you had another girl who got to top 5 ITF at only 15 years old, and a lot of other players had success. And you spent 10,000 hours on court with Nick Kyrgios from a young age. I think you discovered him at a local tournament. So it'd be interesting to hear more about that.
Yeah, I first saw Nick play when he was about 9 years old, actually at a tournament that I was running at the club that I was coaching at the time. And yeah, just from an early age, he was just a super competitor. One of those kids are super competitive, highly competitive, probably over competitive. And he's shown that through his career. So yeah, really interesting to see him. He wasn't very athletic when he was young, but he was great competitor and ability to find a way to win. I'm going to talk about that more throughout this podcast, and just played very aggressively from a young age and really developed those weapons from a young age. Couldn't move very well, so had to play first strike tennis, and that kind of evolved over the years. But that was the basis of his game, was playing aggressively and competing very hard and finding a way to win. Those two or three characteristics have gone through his whole career with him, and hugely beneficial for him and for any tennis player, I think. So that was really interesting. I coached him from age 10 to 17. Then he moved on to another program, Tennis Australia program, for a couple of years. And then I went back with him on tour for about 9 months in 2014 and 15. So, was able to have, that whole time with him in juniors and then see some time with him on tour as well. So got both aspects, which was really great learning experience for me. Nick, I think I taught him a lot, but he also taught me a lot. What it is to be talented, what X factor is, what it is to bring competitiveness and great work ethic, particularly through juniors. Worked incredibly hard throughout his tennis career.
Oh, that's awesome. And when you worked with him on the tour, I think he made the quarterfinals of 2 Grand Slams, right?
Yep. He halved his ranking from 48 to 24 at the time. He was only 19. He made the quarters of Wimbledon. That was just before I started with him. And then he made the quarters of the Aussie Open. He had a win over Federer in Madrid. Federer was number 1 in the world at the time. Nick was only 19. That was an incredible match. Made the third round of the French and his first ATP final in Estoril on clay, which was interesting that it came on clay because probably now he probably doesn't regard it as his best surface, but I still think he's really good on clay if he was really willing to commit to that clay court season, which he hasn't really in the last few years. But early days when he played on clay, he played really well on clay, and interesting that his first final came on clay.
Yeah, I mean, his forehand is so suited to clay. He gets so much rip and it's so heavy. Serve is so big, especially the kicker. Yep. How did you develop that forehand? I know in the Coach Life content, you talk about the importance of, and a lot of our coaches talk about the importance of developing a weapon. And you said you spent a lot of time working on forehand drills, and you had a great forehand as a player, and you thought that was important to develop.
Yeah, it's really key. I think as a player, I had a great forehand, but I didn't have enough weapons in my game. I had to scrap and compete hard to win points. My coaching philosophy when I started coaching was really you need to have a great serve and a great forehand. And I spent a huge amount of time educating myself and talking to other coaches and working on developing with my players great first serve, good kick serve, and a big forehand. We spent every single day, really, every single session, 6 days a week. I really worked on, the one thing I always did, whether it was whatever we were doing in the session, I'd do buckets of attacking forehand drills every single day with my players for a 7-year period, from when they were 10 to 17, that group of players. So also knew how to teach a good forehand technique. So you combine a good forehand technique with doing attacking forehand drills every single day. And every single one of those players had really good forehands. And some of them had really, really good serves. And I think, it's evident in Nick's game that he has a massive serve and a great forehand. He can hit attacking winners and forehand winners from any position on the court when he's going backwards, moving forwards, running around, can off forehands, inside in, line, cross, hit huge forehands from every position. And I will take, not taking a lot of credit for some of Nick's X factor, of course, but I will take some credit for his serve and his attacking forehand. I think backhand was more natural, something he developed himself. But yeah, daily attacking forehand drills and not just feeding, but I think with any skill you develop, I follow a 3-step process. You got to feed, then you've got to transition that into drilling, and then you've got to transition that into point play and then into match play. You can't expect a player to go from, I can hit an attacking forehand off a fed ball. Why isn't that doing it in a match? You've got to progress, and you've got to have the environment set up for that. You've got to progress those skills continuously. And you've got to regress as well, go back to feeding all the time. Feeding, drilling, point play, match play with each skill that you try to develop.
That's absolutely brilliant. And in terms of a 2-hour session, would you do that ball feeding every day and then progress it every day from ball feeding to drills to point play?
Yeah, I think it depends what session you're running. But in a private lesson, I was taking a private lesson. Yeah, I'd try to do feeding. I did a lot of hitting with my players. So I'd do feeding and then I'd do some drilling and then I'd try to play some points with my players. I don't play as many points now. I'm just too old and too slow, too unfit. But I certainly when I was coaching Nick, I was age 30 to 40 and I was fit and playing well. But I think whether you have private lesson or whether you have a couple of players on the court, I would continue to follow that system where we did feeding, uh, implement that into drilling, and then set up drills. Whatever skill you're developing, you have to be creative and set up drills where you're working and trying to develop those skills within a point situation, and then transitioning into serve and return and match play, where you're like, okay, we've worked on this. Now we're going to set up bonuses or whatever you need to do for forehand winners, or creating points short where they have to win points within 3 or 4 shots, etc. You have to get creative as a coach to try and transition those skills from the feeding and the close skill into the open skill and the match play. And I've just continued to follow that. I think it's a really good formula for coaches and for players to develop those skills and transition them from the close skill to the match play. But yeah, 2-hour session, yeah, absolutely. You can easily fit all those things in 2 hours.
I love it. And that brings me to some more of your content where you talked about the amount of hours that Nick trained as a junior. And, you know, it wasn't the 4 or 5 hours a day that you hear about a lot of other academies or players doing. It was only, I think, between 12 and 15 hours a week. Do you think that the specific nature of each session, that you had it planned out and he was always there with you, helped with that? And, you know, if players don't have that, do you think that they need to do a higher volume of hours?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the way that our academy was structured, we only had 7 players to coach. I had a full-time wage paid for me by Tennis Australia. So I had as much time as I could possibly need with a small coach-player ratio. I mean, ideally, probably 4 or 5 is better, but I think I handled 6 or 7 players. So yeah, the way structured, we did a lot of private lessons. We did a lot of small group sessions. We only really did a big squad session where we had 7 or more players once a week, really. So because we had smaller groups, I was always on the court with the players. We could deliver a higher intensity of training and more specific training to that player. I felt that I didn't need to do the volume that maybe academies do. Maybe you do need to do more volume if you don't have that intensity within your sessions and you don't have your coach on court with you and it's not as specific. Maybe the volume needs to be a little bit bigger, but I still think the ideal way to set up an academy is with a low player coach ratio where you can set it up and do less hours on court. Then you can focus more hours in strength and conditioning and looking after your body. But then you're also able to fit in other sports or activities to develop the hand-eye coordination and all the other athleticism skills that you maybe don't develop on a tennis court. Nick's example is basketball. He played basketball from 6 or 7 years old all the way through to 15 years old. And it doesn't have to be a huge amount. He did 1 training session and 1 match a week. A basketball match only lasts an hour and a training session only lasted an hour. But then he also played with his mates occasionally, basketball. But playing that sport, having the time to play that other sport and develop his footwork, his hand-eye skills, he loved playing it. So it's a great outlet from just playing tennis all the time. I think it was a really big factor in how skillful he is with his hands and his feel and his timing and his creativeness on court and his footwork and athleticism in general. I do think less hours on court, more strength and conditioning, look after your body, play another sport if you can. For me, that's the perfect setup if you can get it.
Yeah, really fascinating to get insights into his development. And I know you were really big on the environment, and I learned a lot from that with the Coach Life content. So could you tell us a little bit more about that? I know you've prepared something today for us.
Yeah, like hopefully I've prepared this little board just to explain how I structured the environment for 15 years. So I'm going to try to get that on there. Is that okay?
Yep.
A bit closer maybe. So basically we've got 4 phases. of development. And this is how I tried to structure the academy. So number one, well, it's a circle, right? So it can start anywhere. Skill development phase, I think, is really important. And I talked about that training environment where you need private lessons in juniors, you need small group sessions. So in that skill development phase, which runs anywhere from 2 to 8 weeks, you're going to work on technique, you're going to work on strength and conditioning, you're going to play your other sport, you're going to improve your consistency, your offense, your defense, your movement, your footwork, and you're really going to develop your game style. So that's when you do your your real work, I suppose, if you like, and your real development work. And, you might have to change technique or development technique, and you just week in, week out. It feels like hard work. It feels like you're grinding. The coach is going every day. The players are going every day. Then I think that's really important to have at least 4 of those within a year for a junior development player. And that, like I said, ideally they probably run 6 or 7 weeks, could be up to 8 or 9 weeks. Really key, I think, my philosophy as a coach is train to improve. Then when you play, you try to play to win and get the best possible results you can. So you're not just, as a coach, you can't just say, I'm just trying to get results, or I'm just trying to develop. Oh, results don't matter, I'm just trying to develop. Or development doesn't matter, I just need to get results. You need to get both. You need to achieve both as a coach. So you need that preparation phase, different to your skill development phase. You need that preparation phase leading up to a tournament where you're going to work on more match play, serve and return, your game style and your winning plays, more on your strengths than you are on your weaknesses, I think, in that preparation phase. You're going to taper off physically a little bit. So you're going to try to peak for your tournaments. You don't want to go in your tournaments exhausted. And you're going to work on things really specific to the individual player in preparation for their matches. So I think that's really important to have that preparation. And that could be just 1 or 2 days. Or if it's a really important tournament, like a nationals, we would spend 2 weeks in that preparation phase. So the competitive phase is the next step. And that's really important as well, because not just going to compete and try to win, you're also going to learn during that competitive phase. So some of the things you're going to learn and develop are your mental and competitive skills. You're going to learn your tactics and your game style and understand your game. You're going to learn off-court your self-organisation, your preparation and your professionalism for matches. You're going to learn how to manage your body and stay fit and play multiple matches and weeks in a row. Also for coaches, that's when you really develop your relationship with your player, because you're going to be on the road with your player and you're going to get to spend more time with them. And then your adaptation and resilience mentally and physically, really important. So really important, the competitive phase, you're learning a lot different things to what you are in the skill development phase and the preparation phase. And then the last phase, which is really important, I think, is recovery and the learning, the self-analysis, the rest and recovery physically and mentally, getting away from tennis completely. Coach analysis, sit down with your coach, analyze the matches, what you learnt, switching off from tennis. And then in that phase, you're going to plan as well. Okay, what have I learnt from my competition? And generally, as a coach, I'd have a notebook and I'd have a lot of things on every player. When you watch them play a match, all the weaknesses, all the good things, all the bad things are shown when you step on the court and compete. So you're then going into your planning for your next skill development phase. So that's a really important phase as well. And I think for some parents, they miss this phase. They go competitive. Oh, we've got so much to work on. Let's go straight back into training. Like, where's the rest, recovery? Where's the time off? Just to get yourself motivated and re-energized to go again into your tough skill development phase. So that, for me, that's the environment you are looking for as a parent or a player. You're looking for this environment that gets all these phases. You've got your coach with you in competition, in preparation, in skill development, and in planning. So that's the perfect training environment. I think it's really important that the environment, I can talk more about that, the environment's almost more important than the coach, if you like. So, yeah, that's where I sit with trying to develop a world-class environment.
I love it, and we'll include all that in the show notes so people can see exactly what's on camera. And when you talk a little bit more about the environment, I know in your content you talked about having clay courts, indoor courts. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's huge, isn't it? The physical environment. I mean, having strength and conditioning, having some indoor courts is really good. I think it's going to rain wherever you are. It could be really cold. Having clay courts, absolutely critical. I think I say a clay court is my best assistant coach. So many things you learn on clay that you don't learn on other courts. Defense, you can do longer, tougher consistency drills. Defense offense is more prominent on clay than any other surface. Ability to finish at net, to develop these defensive slice skills, the sliding, the work you put in the legs and the endurance you get in your lungs and your legs is better on clay. And also transitioning it to net. You come to net more on clay than you do on a fast hard court because the points are so fast on a fast hard court that whereas on clay, you need to finish at the net. And there's more finishing at net on clay than there is on a hard court. So that's really important. So have, different training partners, be able to hit down and up, to have private lessons. Like I said, strength and conditioning, to have, time, well-being, kind of relaxation times with your coach and other players off court, to have the ability to train by yourself, players to train by themselves, or parents to come down and get a bucket of balls and do additional sessions, really important as well when the coach is away or sick or whatever. So that physical environment, incredibly important, and can do 50% of the coaching for the coach sometimes. So that physical environment combined with a great coach, combined with, like I just described, that having those different phases within the year, I mean, that is world-class. That's a world-class training and development environment. And it's what parents and players and coaches should be trying to aspire to, trying to find. There's not that many in Australia right now, to be honest. But that's there's definitely one. We've got one National Training Academy in Brisbane, which is Tennis Australia. But that's really players aged 17 to 24. But you really need to start that environment from 8 or 9 years old for me to become a truly world-class player.
Yeah, and just talking to you, you can see how obsessed you are with being a coach and learning and improving as a coach. And, what I found really interesting was we launched our product, coachlife.com, 2 months ago. And since then, I think you've watched 90% or 95% of the content. And most of the coaches have actually been like that, which I thought was amazing. You're such a voracious learner. Is that what makes you such a great coach? And could you tell us a few things that you learned from watching the Coach Life content?
Yeah, absolutely. What makes you a great coach is learning off other coaches. And something we haven't done in Australia, we've done terribly. And you become really, at your one venue, you can become really isolated as a coach. Just go out day in, day out with a bucket of balls and a court and your player, and you're not getting the opportunity to really learn other drills and philosophies and theories from other coaches. And it's probably, I would never turn up to someone else's, another coach's environment and sit there for a day and watch what they're doing. It'd be unethical to do that. So how do you learn? And Tennis Australia hasn't really facilitated. So this has been unbelievable for me to be able to watch 19 other coaches and their philosophies and their drills and everything that goes. It's been incredible. Some of the things I learned, it just reinforces what you think you're doing well, and some things are new. Certainly the importance of developing good technique at a young age, and looking at Sly Black's videos and the way he goes about it just reinforces to me how important that is. That phase from 6 years old to 12 years old, how much time he's spending developing footwork, preparation and footwork. I mean, the basis of how you hit the ball, incredibly important. That was a huge thing that I learned off him. Again, the role of parents, which I want to talk about more, really important to hear other coaches talk about that. our parents should not be involved in coaching, but there's lots of other things that they can do and be incredibly important part of their child's development and tennis development without being sports psychologists or coaches. I want to go into that more. That's really important. The importance of simply working hard and consistently working hard day in, day out. I mean, the Canadian coach who coached Shapovalov, I've forgotten his name. What's his name?
Adriano Fioravia.
Yeah, so some of his philosophies on no excuses. That's something I've tried to push with my players as well. Is just no excuses. That's something I've learned and been reinforced to me. I love his philosophy about that. Hugely important. The importance of the left hand in the backhand. I mean, I wasn't the greatest backhand coach, but I've improved just watching Coach Life. The importance of using that left hand and doing all those left-handed drills, something that came through with all the coaches. So I've really implemented that into my coaching, and I've seen improvement already in the backhands of my players, implementing those drills. The other thing I was going to say is the importance across all 19 coaches. The one massive thing that I learned is the commitment of the coach throughout the journey. Every single coach you see on there, I spent 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years with my coach every day, all going to all the tournaments, spending 5-6 days on court with them. The commitment of the coach is enormous. And when I look back on the period that I coached Nick, the 7 years, and then I had some girls for about 4 or 5 years, at the end of that 12 years period, I was 13 years, I was absolutely exhausted. And I think that's because I was so committed and so dedicated to those players and to getting the best out of those players and improving. So, yeah, like it's inspired me and motivated me, and also I've become a better coach from this website. So thanks, Peter, for putting it together. It's been incredible, and I encourage anyone involved in elite tennis to sign up. You will learn so much. You get so motivated, and it's just the cost of a couple of private. Think how much we spend on tennis coaching and traveling, etc. Just the cost of a couple of private lessons. So much information on there.
Yeah, no, thank you, Todd. Yeah, it was amazing to shoot the content with you. I learned so much, and just on my own journey coaching my daughter, she was about a 3 UTR when I first started Coach Life, and then probably a year later, I think she's 5 now, but maybe closer to a 5.5. And a couple of questions that I have is, when I started coaching her, I was big on the Barty style of coaching that, we had to teach her variety and slices and come to the net. And most of the sessions were based around that. And, since I started Coach Life, I stopped doing that as much. And like you said, it reinforces, you see constant themes across the content. And I've just been focusing the sessions more on that. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about, the coaches nowadays teaching the Barty style, and whether you think that's the right way to go with all female players.
Yeah, that's a really interesting topic, because I've been through that whole journey, because the first 7 years I coached boys, and then I went into coaching girls. And so with the boys, I was teaching all the skills, like you say, all the defense and all those different additional skills. And I probably went into girls thinking, I can do the same. I can. Why can't I? Like I was probably like you. I probably spent too much time on trying to develop those additional skills and not focusing enough on the core skills. And I think there's two distinct players with girls. There's aggressive baseliners, girls who hit the ball clean, they hit it hard, they stand up on the baseline, and they dictate and dominate. And then you've got the Barty player who has got the additional skills and a different game style. Two distinct game styles, but in reality, there's probably only 10 to 15% of girls who can play the Barty way, and 80% or 90% of girls who play the other way. So I'm really now going, unless I really see a girl who's got phenomenal athleticism and hand-eye and can pick up those skills quickly, I'm focusing my time with the girls on developing the core skills of forehand and backhand, really clean technique, good preparation, all the things Sly Black talks about, good preparation, be able to create power off both wings, hit the ball hard and clean, play aggressive, stay on the baseline, up near the baseline, dictate play, good serve, good return. And then once they can do those fundamental skills, then trying to add in, finishing at the net, etc. So I think you need to look at type of player you have. I mean, it's interesting with Ash Barty, right? Because I knew her from a very young age because I saw her at all the tournaments, and she was an incredibly sporty, you wouldn't mind me saying, tomboy type of girl who we were out playing touch footy. I was playing, a lot of sports with my group of kids. She'd be the one joining in, being able to play kick footies and take marks and pass balls on the run. And so she was a unique girl who was incredibly sporty, who could pick up any sport from a very young age. There aren't many girls like that. I'm not being sexist. It's just the way it is. So that was a unique thing for her. And you've got a girl like that. I think you can teach all these additional skills, but you're right. With girls, I teach girls different to boys and focusing on those fundamental basics of good technique and clean ball striking and an aggressive game style baseline play is the conclusion I've come to.
Yeah, fascinating. I love it. And that's been the main focus for us, along with trying to develop her movement. She's quite slow around the court, and we've been developing that over the last 9 months, and I'm finally starting to see the results. And I know you talked about Nick wasn't the greatest mover. So do you think that's something that can be taught, and how can you go about that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It definitely can be taught. There's absolutely no doubt. And again, I think you got to look at the type of player that you've got. For some kids, you genuinely do not need to teach movement. You got a sporty, athletic kid. The drills you do and everything that you set up, they will naturally develop their movement. But the kids who are not that, don't move that well, then you have to, I think, individualize and specific. And for me, what's worked best is looking at what individual movement aspects they're not good at, and then really focusing in on those and working on those. For example, for Nick, he had good footwork and good split steps within a couple of meters, but moving wider to balls or that sprinting aspect was poor. So we had to work more on specific moving, running wide to the forehand or running wide to the backhand, working on open stance, or sprinting to that short ball and being able to play the shot. His footwork around the ball was pretty good, but his speed and stuff was not. And I've had different girls who are quite quick, but don't use their legs well or their body well enough. They're too upright. So for me, working on the individual, looking at the individual, and seeing what individual aspects they are poor at, and then isolating those and working on that. And that's why Dave Bailey's stuff's so good. He has been able to break down and isolate every single movement on the court, and then this is how I teach it, and these are the steps that I progress to teach that. So that's kind of the way I would work. But movement does improve as you get older and more athletic. For Nick, it was just me and a group of players. We didn't have believe it or not, we didn't have strength and conditioning. We had very little strength and conditioning from that age of 10 to 17. And that I've talked about the importance of moving on to the next environment. At 17, he was offered a place in the Australian Institute of Sport where he was going to get a full-time trainer, dietitian, so much more individual physical training, full-time physio, with a group of those players. So that's when he really improved his movement, when he was able to move on to that next environment and get more attention. And that's it. Had I kept him in my environment, he just wouldn't have developed in those areas. So that was incredibly important for him. And as you get older, you get stronger, right? He was young and he was slow, but he wasn't strong. As he got to that 17, 18, 19, he developed the strength in his legs, and that transitioned into his speed and his power and his movement.
And then he would have gone through a growth spurt at one point, and you talk about the constant need to clean up technique after tournaments due to like
Yeah.
grip slipping around. And then again, you said that's something that you learned from coach life, the importance of technique. But how often would you need to clean up technique with your players, and how would you do that?
I think you're working on it daily, not daily, but I think you're working on in private lessons. I did probably a couple of private lessons a week. I think every single private lesson for 7 years, I'm working on some technical aspect and going back to the ball feeding and regressing and just working on that every single week, every single year. But there's absolutely no doubt when you go through those preparation and competition phases, and they can last 5 or 6 weeks sometimes, that in kids, weird things will happen and grips will slip and funky things will happen with technique. And you'll come back after that phase and think, geez, something's gone bad here. I need to go back into the development phase. I need to do more feeding and we need to clean it up. I just think it's a constant thing. The constant, with Nick's forehand, he had a really extreme twist on his backswing. And you can see now he lifts and turns, but he still twists a little bit at the back. But it went from extremely ugly twisty to much cleaner with a little bit of a twist. So that's a good example of me continually just trying to chip away and work on it. Didn't get it absolutely textbook perfect, but we continue to work on things and improve things. And that's with every aspect technically. I don't think that ever stops. My time on tour, I see Serena Williams and other players, that the players are out there ball feeding. Rafa did a huge amount of ball feeding. And Moya's standing there telling him, like, no, swing out through the ball more. You've lost your backhand. You're too short. Continuous work on trying to clean things up and improve things. And if things have gone wrong, a little bit wrong technically, continue to try to improve. I don't think it ever stops. So it's just an ongoing process. But the most important technical phase is that 5 or 6 years old through to 14. For me, that's the most important technical phase. That's where you build the basis of your technique, is in those years. That's why it's so important. So much like Sly's theory on coaching in that period, lots of private lessons, lots of technical work during that time period.
Yeah, and what's fascinating about Sly's content is he coached Coco Gauff from 6 to 14, and she had a semi-Western grip, and she finished over her shoulders, and that was okay. But then she went over to France, I guess, and trained at Miraculous Academy, and the grip started slipping, and now you see it's extreme Western. So I guess she started playing on red clay for the first time. And how important do you think is it to keep in touch with your junior coach that developed your technique, even if you move on to another environment and you have other voices? Is it important just to keep in touch with your junior coach and maybe talk to them or get some lessons every now and then, or have them involved in some capacity?
Really interesting, isn't it? So had she stayed with Sly, even if she'd been on tour and training and traveling the world, had she maybe stayed with Sly for 3 or 4 more years longer, I have no doubt that he would have kept correcting her grip, pushing it back towards semi-Western. So I think it's incredibly important. Even with Nick's an example for me, in that 2.5 year period he was in the next program, I was always in the background watching him, not communicating directly with Nick, absolutely not interfering with the coaching, but communicating with his couple of coaches he had in the background and watching him and saying, I think he needs to work on this. I think just whether those coaches took it on or not, but me just in the background trying to still support and advise. And so I would highly recommend players who are traveling a lot and maybe that private coach doesn't want to travel and they specialize in that younger area. Yeah, going back to your private coach be incredibly important for some coaches. No one probably knows you better, right? Probably no one knows that athlete better than the coach who spent that huge amount of big block of time with that player. They know that player. They know how they learn. Things are not going right. They probably know how to get that player back on track. They might be able to get that player back on track and then send them off again to back on tour or back onto their tour with their tour coach. So yeah, incredibly important. That player to stay in touch with that coach to stay in touch with the player and continue that relationship
Yeah,
ongoing.
and when you talk about Nick's forehand and the twist, and you were trying to clean it up, at some point, I know in the content on Coach Life, you mentioned that you had to make the decision that to change it fully just wasn't worth it, and you thought it would hold up on the Pro Tour, and it has held up. So I guess it comes down to that as well. You can move to another coach, maybe they make a big technical change, but it probably should be a collaborative process between the player, your previous coach, and your new coach.
Yeah, I agree. I probably made that mistake at times early in my career where I'd get a player from another coach and I'd go, I don't even need to talk to that coach. He was an idiot. Or how had he not changed that Western grip or whatever? Far more experience now where I'll always talk to that coach and get a full handover. I say, but she's got a Western grip. Why haven't you done that? Or that swings. And the coach is almost inevitably be so I've tried to do that. I've tried to clean up. I've tried to address that. I haven't been able to. So then you know the history, but then you can maybe say, okay, I'm going to have another crack at that. I'm going to try. What methods did you try? I'll try something different. So that communication with that coach before is really important. And yeah, just knowing the history of the player and the personality, and yeah, then you've got to decide when to intervene and not intervene, and what you think is going to hold up long term and what you think isn't. Really important aspect of coaching. I talked about that before in Coach Life, but that comes with experience, I think, coaching and other mentor coaches you've had around you. It's why Coach Life's so important.
Yeah, and we, on the site we have both of Iga Swiatek's coaches. We have her first coach from 9 to 16, Michal Kaznowski, and he sort of thinks differently to a lot of coaches, and he had a TheraBand around her shoulders for 20 or 30 minutes every day. He believed that you should keep the elbow in pretty close, and he was trying to correct an overswing. But then her next coach, Piotr Sears-Patowski, had her from 16 through to winning her first French Open title, and he thought it was too close, and he wanted to create some space there. But
Yep.
So I thought that was interesting.
I found that really interesting as well because I teach a lot of space, right? Great extension like Federer and Nadal, and it's interesting that he adapted. That wasn't working. He adapted, brought it in, but she's got a great forehand. She's got a great forehand, number one in the world. And she is a little tight for my liking, but it's a great shot. So it just goes to show, like, you have to adapt to the individual, and you have to coach the individual, and you have to find a way that's going to work for that individual. And that's what he did. That's great. What great coaches do, I think. They adapt and work with that individual, and great coaches are able to get the best out of any player they take on, no matter with the personality or the game style or the gender or whatever. So I found that really interesting how he changed and adapted and he got a result, right? That's what high performance coaching is about, really, in the end, getting the best out of your player and getting results.
Absolutely. And I know you touched on it before, just regarding parents and, how important their role is. I mean, it's just vital. It's everything. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I've got a lot to say about parents, and I wrote down some notes here, and it's really interesting. Parents play a really, really important role. I haven't spoken this much about on Coach Life. Really important role, right? And I want to lay out the two most important roles that parents play. Number one is developing the personal characteristics, the character of your child. That's your role as a parent. Don't dish that off to the school teacher or to the coach. They will try, but the number one influence on developing the personal characteristics of your child will be you. And when I say personal characteristics, I'm talking about perseverance and persistence, resilience, desire and passion, determination, gratitude, a strong work ethic, a positive and optimistic attitude. I mean, these things are life skills, which if we all want our children to have these things, right? A burning desire for what they're doing. The book Think and Grow Rich, which is an unbelievable book everyone should read, talks about having a burning desire to do something and then anything is possible, right? So how do you teach that in your kids? Perseverance and persistence, incredibly important for tennis, There's a famous AFL coach by the name of Dennis Pagan, who was very successful with North Melbourne Football Club in Australia. He said perseverance and persistence knows no failure. I mean, that is such a great line, knows no failure. So these are characteristics that will last a lifetime, will be hugely important for tennis, and are the parent's role. So that's number one. Number two thing is, which is really important, is to try to help develop the professionalism of your child. Again, the coach will try, but it's the off-court things and the daily habits and discipline that you want in your child that will make a big difference, positive difference to their tennis. So a good diet. How do you teach them how to have a good diet? Their stretching and their rehab. These are things they're going to do at home. Good sleep. The preparation of their equipment. The tournament entries. So try and develop your child into an organized professional person. Like, you can't expect a 12-year-old to be organized and professional, but you can influence them and you can teach them and you can develop those skills throughout their journey, throughout their teen years. My brother always used to say to me, if you're a muddle off court, you're going to be a muddle on court. If you're self-organized off court, you're going to be more organized tactically and mentally when you compete in a match. So that's hugely important. So there are two massive areas where parents can play huge roles, right? And developing the character and the professionalism of your child. So what not to do as a parent, just as important as what to do. So don't be a sports psychologist. Don't try to be a psychologist. It takes years to be a good psychologist. You don't have the skills. Don't try and be a parent and a sports psychologist. Don't be a coach. I mean, if you think you've got your kid into a great coach with a great coach in a great environment, and you're happy with that, then why are you? I say, why are you trying to coach? Why are you trying to coach if you think you've got a good coach? Why are you trying to coach? That's what I'd say to parents. But don't be a sports psych. Don't be a coach. Hold your child to account for their effort off court, the professional things, their effort on court. You want 100% effort, and you want behavior, a level of behavior which is acceptable to you and acceptable to everyone around in the tennis environment. So hold your child account for those two things, but don't try to coach them and don't try to be a sports psychologist. And the other big thing I want to say about parents is, when watching matches, it's absolutely critical. When you sit and watch a match, that you sit there calmly and you have a poker face. Can't expect, no matter how emotional you're becoming as a parent, you can't expect your child to be calm and composed. You can't sit there and watch it and not be calm and composed. How do you expect your child to be calm and composed on the court? Like, you can't be throwing your arms off and walking away and coming back and arguing with referees and berating your child on court. You can't do all that and expect them to be calm and composed on court, which is what they need to be. Best example I heard someone say, I'm not sure if it was on Coach Life or a podcast, was Oracene Williams. What a great example. It's contrast to Richard, right? Richard was carrying on like an idiot on the court, on the sidelines. She sits there calmly, composed, doesn't show any emotion. You can still support your child. You can still clap. You can still say, well done. When they look at you, with a fist pump, you can still give a little fist pump back. Supportive, but not emotional, not showing emotional body language. That's incredibly important. And if you come and watch your kid, and you're going to sit and watch your kid, stay the whole match. For God's sake, stay the whole match. They're losing. Don't disappear because they're losing, right? Or because you can't handle the emotions of the match. It's getting too close. I'm going to leave. Sit there. If you're going to commit and sit and watch the match, stay and watch the match. So I just think those three or four things, hugely important. And you can see I'm passionate about what parents do. Parents can make or break a player. And we've seen parents break their players. The other thing was unconditional love. Whether your child wins or loses, treat your child the same whether they win or lose. What you're looking for is effort and behaviour. So if they've given 100% effort and they've behaved respectfully, then that's all you should expect as a parent, right? You shouldn't be going, oh, well, we're going to go out and have an ice cream because we won, but now you lost, and no, now we're not. Like, just unconditional love for your child, regardless of whether they win or lose. So that's my parent rant, Pete. Sorry about
Absolutely.
that. I'm passionate about parents and the roles of parents and how important they are, but you have to define your roles, what you're doing as a parent.
Yeah, I mean, that is just the best advice I've ever heard, and should be the blueprint for every tennis parent. Just absolutely brilliant. I mean, parents can get frustrated when coaches tell them to stay out of it, but you just outlined their role really clearly. Their role is so important in those off-court things like stretching and recovery and sleep and developing resilience and mental toughness and your attitude. All those things are more important than what the coach is doing. But then understanding the boundaries and staying out of just brilliant advice, Todd. I love it. We're going to also include that in the show notes. We'll bullet point that.
Right. Cool.
Yeah. So,
right.
And then I wanted to talk to you about what you would say to your players before. I mean, you're not saying anything during matches, but before and after matches, and how you would deliver that message and when you would deliver the message, and then how you would go about working on different aspects of what what happened in matches.
Yeah, I think I've always taken like a 3-step process in dealing with. So let's say you got the national junior titles coming up, the biggest tournament of the year. All your players are going to start feeling anxious, and they're going to start thinking about that event probably 2 or 3 weeks out. So that's where the preparation phase prior to the tournament is so important. So if you've prepared really well, specific to the individual, you've done a lot of match play scenarios, you've played a lot of practice sets leading up, tried to put some pressure on those practice sets, whatever that is, finding a way to make it pressureful. So when they go into that tournament, they've at least prepared well, that they're hitting the ball well, they've played specific to them, that feeling like that takes pressure off for a start. That's number one. The second thing I always thought is better is the next phase, which always took pressure off me as a player, trying to get your player tactically organised so they understand their gameplay, their game style, they understand their winning plays, they practice them. They're tactically organised within their own game style, but then you're trying to look at your opponent and give them a junior player one or two things, not too much, one or two things, which they know, okay, this kid is weaker on his forehand side. Under pressure, I want you to serve there. I want you to attack that player's forehand. If you do that consistently, you're going to get some mistakes. It's going to give you a better chance of winning the match. So people say, what comes first? Coaches discuss what comes first. Is it the mental or the tactical? For me personally, you can get the tactical right first and organised in your head what you can do. That assists with the mental side of your game. So the third step is getting the mental side of your game right. So following a routine, a mental routine, having some key words that you need to say to yourself, which is going to be different for all players, key words and a key routine, getting that and practicing that prior in your match play prior, having those 3 things in place, good preparation, understanding your game style and being tactically clear, and then having a mental routine. Despite doing all those 3 things, players are going to choke, they're going to get scrambled, they're going to stuff it up. So for me, that 4th aspect is the thing you can't coach, which is the player has to bring the rest of it. Yeah, the coach can do those 3 things, but the players, unfortunately, are going to have to bring the rest of it. They're going to have to be able to compose themselves. They're going to have to be able to relax. They're going to have to execute your shots. There's only so much you can do as a coach, and that is the X factor. That is the difference with being great or okay. Is that competitiveness and being able to bring that X factor competitiveness to the match and being able to consistently win under pressure. And that's the big X factor with the best players I've coached, particularly with Nick. yes, you can get those three things in place, but he's bringing the final most important thing, which is the execution of the shots and being able to do that under pressure and find a way to win in those biggest matches and biggest moments. That's kind of the system that I've followed. Other coaches probably might follow something different, but those three steps, and then just experience. The other thing is experience. You can't underestimate the development of mental toughness. You're developing as a human off court, all those personal characteristics. You're playing lots of matches every year. You're building your self-confidence as a person, and eventually that will translate into success under pressure in a competitive environment. That's my take on it.
Another brilliant blueprint. I love it. And in terms of after the matches, what would you say to them when they're disappointed, or how would you deliver that message, and when would you say it?
Yeah, you got to approach every individual differently, but I like to go through the match, and I like to sit down with them and first talk to them and ask them what they thought about the match, always first. Let them tell me what they did well, what they did badly. Try to get them to talk rather than me delivering everything. These are my 20 things you did wrong and 20 things you did right. Trying to get them to discuss and tell me, because that's a good learning. I think they learn more when they have to either write it down or tell you what they felt on court, and then usually those things will match up with the coach anyway, and then just trying to go, okay, next match we're going to work on one or two things that you didn't do as well in this match, and then the next match again, assessing it again and going match after match after match, just keep chipping away, trying to improve those little things. And then over years and years and years and years, you get better and better at those little things. But also trying to be consistent as a coach and give consistent messages to your players over many years. I'll give you an example with Nick. My philosophy has always been, as a coach, you need to step up under pressure. You need to play to win, not play to hope your opponent loses. Take calculated risks, back your strengths under pressure, back your aggressive game style, and take the risk as soon as you get the opportunity. Take the aggressive risk. So just delivering that message to Nick over 500 or so matches, you hope that it pays off over time. And I think it did with him. But he was naturally wanted to play that way anyway. But you never see Nick not take a calculated risk on a big point. You'll never see him sit back and go, I'm just going to sit back and rally and keep the ball deep and hope the other player misses. Or he will always take the risk, often early in the rally. He will always go for the big shot or the backhand down the line or the massive forehand or the serve volley or whatever. He'll always be the one, the big second serve, to take the risk and try to take control of the point. That's how my coaches taught me, and that's how I've tried to coach my players. So the consistency of your messages eventually will pay off over time, I think. That's really important, to be consistent in your messages, whether your player won or lost. Maybe they could have won a match by just not taking risk and not playing aggressive, but you just got to keep delivering those consistent messages. Oh, you lost the match, but I really like the way you stepped up under pressure. You took the risk, you didn't execute, but you were dictating play. That will pay off for you eventually, even though you lost that match. That's really important, the consistency of what you're delivering to your players.
And that's certainly how you develop a great competitor over the long term. And then you talk about having the need to play, I think, 80 to 90 matches a year, but obviously with that consistency around how you compete and following those steps. Yeah,
I still think that's right. 80 to 100 matches, singles and doubles included, over a course of a year. And that seems like a lot, but that's probably only about 18 to 20 tournaments if you can play 4 to 5 matches a tournament. So that includes doubles as well. And if you, like I said, on my planning phase, you've got to have those development blocks where you just skill development, and then you got to have that preparation. Then you got to have those tournament blocks. You should be able to have 5 or 6 tournament blocks and fit in that 80 to 100 matches. Because like I said, you learn so much about how to compete, and mentally, the mental and tactical side of the game. You learn so much in the competitive phases. Got to have that. It depends on the individual. You don't want to play too much, but I do also think you don't want to play too little either, because you're not developing those competitive skills. Some players might be able to do that, play less. I still think it's a good guide, 80 to 100 matches over a year, every single year.
And how would you, in terms of rest and recovery and weeks off, how many weeks off do you think players should have throughout a year?
I think your weeks off got to come after your competition, because you're mentally and physically exhausted. So if you've got 5, 6 competition blocks, then you're probably going to have 4 to 5 weeks off throughout the year. Maybe 4 to 6 weeks would that probably some coaches would go, that's too much. You got a volume, but I just think those rest and recovery phases are pretty important. It's a long journey, the tennis journey, long journey, just going week in, week out, every single week of your life. It's just too much. You're not going to lose the ability. You're not going to lose your technique. You're not going to lose your movement. You're not going to lose the ability to strike a ball. If you've got a 7-week development phase, you've got a 2-week preparation phase, you've got a 3-week tournament block, you've done 12 weeks in a row, you have 1 week off. You're not going to lose all your skills. It's ridiculous. Of course you're not. You're going to come back re-energized, more motivated, hopefully, and really ready to get into the next hard training block.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it. And yeah, my last question is, I mean, do you have any funny stories about Nick when he was that you can share?
I do have a lot, but not that many that I can share. So we say what goes on tour, Pete, stays on tour. So yeah. I'm going to live to that rule. Okay. But there is one story. I'm going to tell this story because Nick told it on his podcast. Okay. So he's given me a license to tell this story, and it's interesting because it talks a bit about Nick's personality. I was taking a trip with this group of players. We were in Poland, in Warsaw. We're there a week early to get over jet lag. So I decided to do an amazing race. You know what the amazing race is? We run around a city. We have this TV show in Australia. You run around a city, and you've got to, it's like orienteering. You've got to find certain landmarks. You've got to take photos, or you've got to get something that's written on somewhere, and then you've got to get back to home base. And it's the first team who can do it. So that's what it is anyway. So I gave them this challenge. I did the research, went around Warsaw. I had to get to all these places. It's going to take a couple of hours. But I didn't specify how you could get to places. But, I mean, it was kind of an unwritten rule that you were going to do it on foot, right? I kind of sold it as a fitness session. Everyone was going to run around and then run back. And so it was a kind of 2 hours of running and walking. So Nick and his mate, who somehow I paired them up, but the two naughtier kids of my group, Nick wasn't that super fit. So he knew that if it was going to be a running race, he wasn't going to win, right? So he came out with a way that he was going to get taxis everywhere. So he got out he went and got some cash. Yeah, this is 15 years ago or 12 years ago. He went and got some cash. Him and his mate, they got taxis between every landmark where everyone else was on foot, and they won the race. And they got back to me clearly. They didn't tell me that they did it. That they made sure they got home just ahead of the other group. So they didn't get home an hour before, which they could have. They got home just before the other group, but they made sure they won. And Nick, a super high competitive person. This is a good example of him going, I can't win this race because I'm not fit enough. I'm not quick enough. So I'm going to find a way to win it. Highly competitive, wanted to beat the other boys at anything he does. He wants to win. So that's just really interesting that he found a way so many times of his journey when I've watched him play matches, through juniors particularly, not as quick, not as fit as his opponent, but finds a way to win. Somehow finds a way to win tactically and mentally to overcome his opponent and get that win. And that's just one story I can tell out of many that I can't.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah, and then I guess, as you say, finding a way to win when he wasn't as fit and strong, and then he started to grow. He ended up being 6'4", 6'5".
yep,
The huge serve and the athleticism came, and he's certainly
yep.
quick around the court now.
That's right, absolutely. He's a really good athlete, great anticipation as well. He can
Yep.
slide and do all these things. Yeah, so
Yep.
yeah, interesting, really interesting.
Well, Todd, thanks a lot for your time, mate. It's been amazing. I've learned so much. And yeah, people can find your content on Coach Life along with all those other amazing coaches. Hopefully we can do this again in a few months.
So much more to talk about, mate. Thanks so much for having me, and great to chat.
Cheers, mate.